18 to 22.
Listen to a conversation between a student and a professor.
Good morning, Professor Blum. Do you have a few minutes?
Sam Porter, right? You were in my classical composition class last semester.
That's right. I'm surprised you remember me. It was a large class.
Oh, I make it a point to memorize all of my students' names, especially those who are music majors. I have a meeting soon, but I can spare a few minutes to chat. What can I do for you?
Well, my friend John is in your class on Italian opera this semester. He is really enjoying it.
That's good to hear. I actually just started teaching that class last semester, so positive feedback from students is always appreciated.
The thing is, he mentioned that the class would be attending an opera at the Harborview Arts Center on April 11th.
Yes, we will be watching La Traviata, which, as I am sure you know, is one of Verdi's most famous works. We've been talking about 19th century operas, and it will be a great opportunity for the class to hear one live, so I'm looking forward to it.
Actually, it is one of my favorite operas. I have wanted to see it performed for a long time now. This brings me to the reason I wanted to speak with you. I was wondering if you had any extra tickets. It would really mean a lot to me if I could attend the opera with your class.
I'd really like to help you out. It's pretty rare to find a student with such a passion for opera. However, it's just not possible. First, I don't have any extra tickets. I was only given a restricted number, and the university has certain policies about who can participate in field trips.
Really? What do you mean?
Well, only enrolled students are allowed to take part. It's a liability issue. They'll grant exceptions on a case-by-case basis, though. So, if a student from outside the class wanted to participate, he or she would have had to request special permission to attend. I'm afraid the deadline for that has passed. The department sent out a notice to all students about it.
Oh, I must have missed it. But I'd really like to see this opera.
Have you considered buying your own ticket? You could even try to get a seat in the same area as the other students.
Well, this is kind of embarrassing, but I can't afford one. Even the cheapest seats are over $150. I don't have a part-time job right now, so my money is really limited.
What about volunteering at the Art Center? I know they make use of student volunteers. Volunteers help out writing concert brochures and monthly music newsletters, or assist with seating audience members before concerts. And you are majoring in music, so they would be glad to have you. Volunteers get free passes to the performances.
I'm not sure. I have a busy course load this semester.
It would only be for a few hours a week. Not a bad deal, in my opinion.
You're right. I'll stop by there this Saturday to get some more information. Thanks.
I'm glad I could help.
Now get ready to answer the questions. You may use your notes to help you answer. 18. Why does the student visit the professor? (19) According to the professor, why is it impossible for the student to participate in the field trip? (20) Why does the student have very little money right now? 21. According to the professor, what kinds of tasks do volunteers do at the Arts Center? (22) According to the conversation, why is the student uncertain about volunteering?
(23 to 28). Listen to a talk on Beavers' decision-making.
Good afternoon, everyone. Today, I'd like to talk about decisions. Decision-making is a part of our everyday life, right? I mean, you made a decision to come to class today, a decision as to what you ate, and a decision about what clothes you're wearing. Here's the question I want to ask, though. Is decision-making a purely human capability, or can animals do it too? To narrow things down a bit, let's focus on the behavior of beavers. Why did I choose beavers to look at? Put simply, because they make dams. Dam making is a highly complex behavior that allows beavers to build a dwelling that's protected from predators and provides them with safe access to food sources. Dams cause a stream or river to flood, and the beaver lives in a shelter called a lodge in the middle of the flooded region that develops. They make their dams primarily from trees, and if you've ever seen a picture of a beaver before, you can guess how they do it. They use those giant teeth of theirs to gnaw away at the tree's trunk until it falls, and then they cut it up and drag it back or float it downstream to the place they're building the dam. We can already see that there's a decision to be made. The beaver has to decide which trees to cut down and which ones to leave. They have to consider tree size, distance to the tree, ease of transport, the tree location's exposure to predators, lots of variables. Beavers like aspens, willows, and pines, but that could be a genetically programmed preference. In terms of selecting a specific tree, though, well, there was an experiment done a few years ago that dealt with this. A controlled environment was set up where there was a small group of 3 trees relatively nearby and a large single tree quite a bit of distance away, maybe 3 or 4 times farther away than the close ones. What would you do in this situation? Let's take a look at the pros and cons. If the beaver chooses the closer trees, it limits the danger of predators because the beavers can quickly jump in the water to avoid them, since the predators typically can't swim. Going far away from their lodge, their home, exposes them to more danger. Also, we can think of energy expenditure. A beaver is going to use up much more energy trying to drag a huge tree across a large distance than it would by chopping down and carrying 3 small ones. It seems obvious to me which decision to make, yet the beavers in the experiment always went for the single tree. I'm not sure why. It's likely a result of genetic programming.
But don't beavers build their dams at night? Doesn't that put them in danger of predators?
Right. Think about which animals hunt beavers. Wolves, coyotes, wolverines. These are all nocturnal animals. They're awake at night. And if they're awake, chances are they're hunting. This goes to show us, again, that beavers do what they are programmed to do and don't actually think, even if a behavior appears complex. If they could, they'd likely build their dams during the day and rest at night, nodding off to sleep in their island-like lodges.
Now get ready to answer the questions. You may use your notes to help you answer. 23. What does the professor mainly discuss? 24. According to the lecture, what purpose does a dam serve? 25. According to the lecture, what is true of beavers when finding dam building materials? (26) What does the professor say about the beaver's predators? (27) What are two disadvantages of beavers choosing the far tree in the experiment? (28) What do beavers and their predators have in common?
(29 to 34). Listen to part of a lecture from an art history class. The professor is discussing Renaissance art.
I'd like to pick up where we left off yesterday. The visual arts in Renaissance Europe. There were various painting techniques used during this period. Of course, oil painting is probably the most famous. But I want to start with another type of painting, the fresco. This technique isn't used much these days, so you might not be familiar with it. Just so you know the basics, let me briefly outline the process. It starts with putting wet plaster on the wall. And, plaster was basically a mixture of sand, water, and lime at this time. Next, the artist applies water-based paint to the plaster. When paint is applied to plaster, a chemical reaction occurs. This causes the paint to bond with the plaster. The paint actually becomes a part of the wall rather than just covering it. As a result, it is very difficult to fix any mistakes. The paint can't just be wiped off or painted over. Another challenge is that the color of the paint changes significantly as the plaster dries. So an artist can't be sure what a section of the painting will look like until it is finished. Despite these disadvantages, Renaissance artists used the fresco technique to create many stunning works of art. And while the styles of these paintings vary greatly, they all share a couple of key features. Let's take a look at an example. Michelangelo's large paintings on the ceiling of the Sistine Chapel are the most well-known frescoes. But my personal favorite is Raphael's The School of Athens. The majority of frescoes from this period deal with religious themes. But the School of Athens is different. It's not a religious scene. It depicts over 20 scholars from ancient Greece and Rome standing together in a room. People like Plato and Aristotle. Here, let me put a picture up on the screen. I'm sure the first thing that strikes you is the bright contrasting colors. I mean, just look at the robes the figures are wearing. Most of them are bright green, red, blue, or yellow. These are the colors that were typically used in Renaissance frescoes. There's a practical reason for this. You see, the lime in plaster is corrosive. It can actually destroy many of the natural pigments that Renaissance artists used to make their paints. But the pigments that produce the colors I just mentioned are not affected by lime. Now, since the paint was immediately absorbed by the plaster, well, this meant that the artist couldn't really blend different colors together. So each part of the plaster was usually painted only one color. That's why the transitions between the colors in this painting are so sudden. Again, look at the robes. There's none of the gradual blending you'd see in an oil painting. Okay, another thing about this fresco is that many of the people seem to have, I guess you could say, dark, intense eyes. This is because Raphael took advantage of the fact that he was painting on wet plaster. He used his brush to kind of, to press down on the plaster whenever he painted someone's eyes, so they appeared deeper and, more distinct than the rest of the face. This was a common practice when painting a fresco. Artists often did this to create a three-dimensional effect that added emphasis. For example, some painters would push the plaster down around an important figure. This caused the person to stand out more prominently than the other parts of the painting.
Now get ready to answer the questions. You may use your notes to help you answer.
29. What is the main topic of the lecture? 30. What are the disadvantages of the fresco method? 31. What distinguishes the School of Athens from other Renaissance frescoes? 32. Why were only certain colors used when painting a fresco? 33. What does the professor say about the color transitions in the School of Athens? 34. How did artists make certain elements of a fresco more noticeable?